G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5am Club. And also, happy St. Patrick's Day to all my Irish friends, and especially Bridgine, wishing you all the very best on this wonderful day. It's an overcast day in Sydney. It's starting to rain, and it is a special day for everybody celebrating St. Patrick's Day. I think that the March or the St. Patrick's Day celebrations here in Sydney will be a little bit different this year because of COVID-19, but I'd imagine that all the pubs and clubs around Sydney this evening and on the weekend will be chock-a-block. But like the Greeks, their march, the St. Patrick's Day march, I think has been put on hold this year because of COVID-19 restrictions and potential issues. So we look forward to celebrating the St. Patrick's Day next year, maybe with a march, as we celebrate the Greek Independence Day march as well, hopefully next year as well. But what I want to do today is go through a book summary, which is probably topical for my Irish friends, and it's called Solve for Happy by Mo Gawdat. Mo Gawdat has written a book on happiness and basically gives us a few tips on how to be happy and how to make the most of the opportunities that we have available to us. So the author kicks off the book with a lovely quote. And he said that if you can afford the brain cycles to worry about the future, then by definition, you have nothing to worry about right now. You're all okay. It's a good point, because I know there's a lot of people that spend a lot of their time anxious and worrying about the future or worrying about the past. And you say to yourself, well, if you can afford so much time and so much energy to worry about the past or the future, then your current state is pretty good. It's a powerful point. And the author then gives us a formula for happiness. And the formula is a fairly simple one, but a profound one at that, where he says that happiness is equal or greater than the events in our lives minus our expectations of how our lives should be. How clever is that? So it's all about the expectations that we create, which determine the life or the happiness that we generate. Got the river cat here about to leave. So what does this author talk about in their book? One of the first structured points to come out of the book is that we all have a voice inside our head which is not really us. No, even though there's a voice talking 24/7, 365 days a year, that voice is a voice of suggestion, but it's not really us. And the author will talk to us about it and explain what he means by that. Because we all have an internal monologue which goes on over and over and over again, and it runs 24/7, 365. But our minds are basically processing the outside world and then tries to make sense of it as best as possible. But this inner speech that we have is only a suggested dialogue, but it's not a real dialogue. So we don't have to take too much or pay too much attention to it or take it too seriously. We all have the option. This is a very, very powerful point for us all to understand. We have an option to ignore that inner voice that suggestive voice that we have running over and over and over in our heads. The author explains to us that if you expect nothing and just keep observing life, life will always exceed your expectations. It's a really, really powerful thing to understand, that it's the expectations that we have, or the expectations that others foist upon us, that create unhappiness, that create sadness, that create anxiety, that create a lot of the problems that we end up facing in our lives. And in order to understand what's going on in our heads and in our lives at any particular point in time, we need to understand that our brains have automatic filters, have an automatic filter which runs and keeps you from observing everything around you. Because there's lots of things happening in our lives all the time, 24/7, 365 times a year. There are lots and lots of things happening around us and in our lives. But thankfully, we have been given a filter called the reticular activating system, which helps us focus on certain things and not everything. Because if we focused on everything happening at this point in time, we'd absolutely go crazy. We'd be overwhelmed and our brain just couldn't handle it. Because the brain at the end of the day can only focus on a few things at a time and process a few things at a time at the conscious level, whereas at the subconscious level, it's all happening over and over again, and everything's being processed, everything's being stored, and everything's happening, so to speak, at the subconscious level. But at our conscious level, we can only focus on a few things at a time. And thankfully, we have a reticular activating system which allows us to focus on the important things and not to focus on everything. Because humans are built on heuristics. And heuristics are lots and lots of little if-then rules that automate our behavior in certain situations. Things which are behavioral, things which are automated responses, things which basically happen without us having to think about it or think about it. And these shortcuts have been enabled in our lives to help us survive, help us find food, and help us reproduce. They're the instinctive responses, the instinctive behaviors we have to various stimuluses or stimuli which occur around us. It's important to note and to understand that these heuristics have become less useful over time because the dangers that we face, the needs to search for food and the needs to reproduce are less critical to us these days because we have evolved. We have evolved as humans and have a different sort of lifestyle than what humans would have had thousands of years ago or millions of years ago. So we depend on these filters to select. This is important to understand. These filters are still very, very important to us because they help us select what sensory information is passed to our brain for processing, what sensory information is passed to our conscious mind for processing. Because our eyes see everything and our mind ends up filling up the blanks based on our memory and our imagination. So there's a lot happening all the time. So our imagination and our brain and our mind is basically filling in the blanks. So we don't get to see everything. We don't get all the information coming to us at once. But what we do have is we have our mind and our imagination working in conjunction with our conscious mind and our reticular activating system to fill in the blanks. But sometimes the blanks are filled in by things which are not real. It's filled in by our imagination, which could be serving us or not serving us, or it could be being filled in by our memory. And our memory may be sometimes inaccurate, or the memory that we're choosing to use to fill in the blanks may be irrelevant or not serving us as well. And for that reason, we need to understand that the internal dialogue that we have is subject to a lot of these biases, and these biases can or may not be working for us and serving us in the best way we possibly can. So let's move on to another point, and the third structured point to come out of this book is that wherever we can, we need to try and live in the present, because by living in the present is where we are actually at our happiest. Even if bad things happen in our present, the fact that we're living in our present is far better than living in our past or living in our future. Because by living in our past means that we're worrying, we're not happy, we're unhappy, and we tend to worry. Or if we're dwelling on our future or thinking of our future, then we tend to be anxious. And once again, that's not a great place to be. So the best place to be is right here, right now, to absorb whatever's going on around us and to enjoy whatever is going on around us, and to be present and to avoid the mind wandering to the past or the mind wandering to the future. Always try wherever you can to be in the present, because the authors suggest and tell us that it's the present that gives us the greatest happiness. And there have been a number of experiments that have been run where there's an app which is called the Your Happiness app, where you can track your happiness and basically have this app running, and whenever you're feeling happy, whenever you're feeling higher, whenever you're feeling better, you can tap it in and try and identify what is going on in your world at that particular time to figure out what makes you happy and what keeps you happy. But the great feedback from that app, from many thousands of people who have tapped into it and used it, is that being in the present and doing the things that help support other people are the sort of things that make people happier. And also, as we mentioned before, reducing the expectations that we have and pushing back on the expectations that others have foisted upon us or have imposed upon us in our lives. So that's it. So thank you very much for joining me on this wonderful day, St. Patrick's Day 2021, from downtown Sydney on this overcast day. But I'm sure the alcohol tonight will brighten things up for each and everyone. And let's finish off with a positive affirmation. I'm alive, I'm well, and I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable, and let's learn. Let's take a couple of the life hacks from this book and make sure that we don't have too many burdensome expectations on us, so that we can be happy to live in the present and to learn that the voice inside of our heads, that dialogue which operates 365 days a year, 24/7, is not actually us. but we can choose to ignore that voice. We can choose to modify what that voice is telling us to enable us to live a happier, a more fruitful and a better life by not worrying too much about our past and not being too anxious about our future. Basically by not trying to overthink things, but by just trying to make the most of the moments that we have, because it's a compounding effect of all of these moments, these present moments that we have, that will generate the best possible outcomes and best possible things for our lives. And to understand that we have filters, we have biases, which are processing all the things that we have going on around us, and that we have a number of heuristics, a number of little if-then rules, which determine what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and will select what sensory info is passed to our brain, to our conscious brain for processing. So just being aware that there's a lot of things happening all at once that we need to manage in a way which serves us, I guess, is the best possible lesson and message to come from this wonderful book. Take care, everybody. Yassas, Filakya, from Jim's 5 a.m. Club. And it's the third day of my Lenten fast. I've had water only for the past 3 days. And tonight, just after sundown, I will enjoy a minimal meal of nuts and fruit, xyrophagia, as it is called in Greek, and then go for another 2 days of just water to help me live my spirituality, help me live my religion, and feel like what it was like for God when he was fasting during those days when he dwelt amongst man in his human form. So a thank you to all the monks and nuns who are fasting throughout the world at the moment and praying for everybody, and it's my way of supporting them by being with them and fasting with them and knowing how it feels, and to basically prove to myself that it is possible, we are capable of doing it, even though it's physically quite demanding, but it is possible to do, and to show support and love for those who do it for us and on our behalf. Yassas, take care, and we'll chat again shortly. Bye for now.